All right, and welcome back to the Paisan Sports podcast. Dante De Placido, joined as always by Zach Deal.
Yes, sir. How we doing, everybody?
You know what? I'm not doing too bad. I'm not doing too bad.
You already over the Sixers' playoff loss,
I
playoff
mean,
series
I
loss?
last time we talked on the podcast, I was pretty upset, but that was right after I had accepted our fate. We talked
I feel
about
like
last
everybody's
week.
kind of in unison of where they've just accepted the fate. And I was saying, like I'm about to say for probably the sixth or seventh time before a couple weeks ago on the podcast, winning a playoff series this year with all the factors going into it would have been a plus. But I'm also going to be truthful that I thought the Knicks were a very beatable team. And it
Oh,
ended up
they
not going the
definitely
Sixers'
were.
way, but that's why it made it feel a lot worse for me. It's not like I thought we had championship aspirations, you know what I mean? Because I think that's a little far fetched. But I thought even though saying that winning a playoff series would be a plus when they got the matchup and it was the Knicks, you know what I mean? That's when I was really licking my lips, but it ended up not going that way. So it is what
Yeah,
it
I
is, man.
mean, the one thing that kind of makes
There's a
it a
big
little bit
lip
of a
lick
hard
right there.
what?
No, I was saying I was licking my lips, and then before you started talking, you just gave a nice big,
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Anyhow, um the thing that make the part of it that makes it a little hard for me to swallow that they lost to the Knicks is the fact that the next round also seemed pretty
that's what
doable.
makes it worse even so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
it does.
you have the Bucks losing due to Dame Lillard and Giannis missing time. So then you could have went on to play the Pacers in round two, who are also a pretty beatable
And
team
you
in
were
my
also a
opinion.
believer too, just with Doc Rivers at the helm, that they could have got past the Bucks.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I thought as long as they could get past the Knicks, this was uh, one of their best chances to finally get out of the second round. Even if they didn't go any further than that, I just wanted to see them finally make it out of the second round. That's all I've been wanting to see the past 2 or 3 seasons now. It's just make it out of the second round. I don't care what happens after that. But they got outplayed in that Knicks series. Point blank. Period. I do, however, think a bit of a factor into it was the fact that Jalen Brunson gets every call known to man, and he's even doing illegal moves that were banned after Trey Young was doing them too many times. The leaning back into the defender, they were giving Jalen Brunson the call, even though you shouldn't be getting that call anymore after the rule was changed. I do, and it's not to like harp on the refs or anything. But I mean, when you are talking about a series where every game was as close as it was, and one guy is getting calls that he's literally not supposed to be getting, it definitely plays a factor into it. So that also kind of rubs me the wrong way about the series a bit. But I am looking forward to the offseason. They're finally getting rid of Tobias Harris. It's tough to win playoff series when you have a guy performing like that under a max contract. So they get rid of him.
And
Um,
Daryl Morey talked to the media today, and when he was asked specifically about Tobias Harris, there was a clear, not with the verbiage that he was using, but his tone, his literal tone of how he was talking, almost went to monotoned when he tried to PR up Tobias Harris when asked about if he'd be back or not. So I think that ship has really sailed. But I was actually
it's
going to ask
definitely
you,
sailed.
would you take Tobias Harris back in any fashion
No,
if he, for some
no.
reason, because he's going to have people suitors that are going to give him over 15 million. He's honestly probably going to make his next contract probably 25 million a year. If realistic, if we're looking at just comparing contracts to other contracts, he's obviously going to take a pay cut anywhere he goes because no one's going to give him 35 million plus like the Sixers ended up doing. But somebody's going to give him a big paycheck. But you wouldn't even take him back for 10 to 12 million a year.
Absolutely not. Maybe for the vet minimum, I'd have him come off the
I mean, there's
bench.
absolutely no chance. So
Yeah,
that's
but there's
that's
no
I'm
chance
not
of it.
saying I'm not trying
So
to advocate for him to be back on the Sixers or anything, but actually just crossed my mind. Like it would be interesting if he was like willing to take a significant pay cut and like if say like 12 years, 36 million, that wouldn't be that bad. but there's that money that they have is still would be tied, even if they ended up doing that and that worked out somehow, some way. And he took a third of the money that he made on his last contract. I wouldn't be upset with it, but you would have to still you're not taking him back with the onus of, hey, you're still the third best player on the team. Like, no, you're almost a six man at this point. But
Listen, but here's the problem too: is even if you bring him back on a significant pay cut as the sixth man, the relationship has completely soured. He's not a guy who's going to keep the team chemistry up. I mean, granted, you don't know how true it is that this really was his burner account, but I don't know if you saw on Twitter, people did find his burner account allegedly, but it did look pretty convincing. And if that's the case, because he was on there, talking crap about I want to say, no, Buddy. I think I'm getting confused because Buddy Hield was another guy who had a burner account, but he was on there talking. Oh, it was Kelly Oubre. He was on Twitter talking crap about Kelly Oubre, and whatnot. And if that really is him, which I'm pretty convinced it is. I mean, who on Twitter is out there sticking up for Tobias Harris with like a randomized Twitter handle, no profile picture, etc. So I mean, if that really is the case, and he feels ill about his teammates over there, I mean, that's not the kind of locker room presence you can keep around. And even outside of that aspect of it, he just does seem to be a guy who is just at the point where his morale has completely gone down. He seems to whine and complain. It's not a guy I would want to keep in the locker room.
I mean, and also we haven't even mentioned, because the last time we were on the podcast, I think it was one of the games that he actually played well, or actually it was 2 games before he had a pretty decent game in game 5, but game 6, I mean, what a way to end it for Tobias Harris, completely on brand, 0 points, just unbelievable. I don't even think it's as crazy that he had 0 points, but he shot the ball, twice or 3 times the entire game.
Twice.
That's just
Yeah.
unheard of, just unbelievable.
It was very similar to the final game of Ben Simmons' career as a Sixer,
Yeah.
just completely given up. Um it was just very on brand with that.
I
But
always think about with the Ben Simmons trade, I always think about how crazy it was that they were able to net James Harden from that trade with the hindsight of what Ben Simmons has turned into. Like, you can be upset with James Harden, but he did give the Sixers the added boost for the short period of time that he was here. But like, Ben Simmons literally didn't do anything from the point of
oh
him being
yeah,
traded
I
to net
mean,
on. So even with that not working out and them not getting a viable return for James Harden in the trade that they made in the earlier this season, at the end of the day, that trade was still a win because Ben Simmons ended up being a nothing. And if the Sixers had to put up with that for any much longer, I mean, it would have just been horrible. But we're back to square one. I mean,
well, wait,
talking about free agent.
just real quick, while we are talking about Ben Simmons, did you see the photo of him tonight that's gone viral? Him at the Met Gala, dressed in a ridiculous outfit as always, with a bag that has a clock on it. Which is ironic for a couple reasons. I mean, he has a clock on it when he doesn't even play any minutes, when he has no timetable for his return, as other people have said.
No, I was working today, so I didn't see that. But I usually don't pay attention to anything that Ben Simmons does anymore. I don't even think I follow him on social media. I was one of the biggest Ben Simmons fans and believers. I had like 3 or 4 jerseys. He was my favorite player. I was at one point in time, I was sick in the mind, and I was saying that he was a better player than Joel Embiid, and
Yeah, that
I'll
is
own up
that
to it.
is sick. That is sick.
Yeah,
But yeah,
but
off season coming up.
well, that's what I'm
Um,
saying. We're back to square one because at the end of the day, with all the trades and all the movement and the different players on the roster and everything, outside of Tyrese Maxey being a restricted free agent, which gives them the Sixers actually more money to spend in free agency because they can spend all that money and then give an in-house extension to Tyrese Maxey and not dip into that money and just pay the luxury tax. So Joel Embiid's on the roster. Obviously, they're not getting rid of Tyrese Maxey whatsoever. And you have to fill in the blanks for 11 to 12 new players. You know what I mean? So, and some of those guys are going to be two-way contracts or the vet minimums. So, really, you're looking for impactfulness, probably 8 to 9 to 10 players that you have to bring onto this roster that can impact the game. So, Yeah, their work is cut out for them. They have the most money going into free agency of any team in the entire NBA, and there's some names that are listed out there. We got to see what LeBron does. Either stays with LA or opts out of that contract with his player option. Jimmy Butler, there's kind of rumors that the Heat may not extend him and he might be available. Obviously, Paul George. You got the two guys from Toronto that were coached by Nick Nurse and Pascal Siakam and OG Anobi, who are on expiring deals, who are going to need free agent contracts. And there's some other names out there. So, we got to see what they're going to do. But I really want to bring a wing into the conversation and bring a wing onto the roster for the Sixers. And hopefully that name's not Tobias Harris.
Yeah, it won't be Tobias Harris. I do agree with you that they need a wing. Because you look at the guards they have, if they keep, you know, I there's a few guys that they can keep and put in the starting rotation along with Tyrese Maxey, that being Kelly Oubre, Cam Payne, D'Anthony Melton.
How do you feel about
Why do I
specifically
feel like
D'Anthony
blanking
Melton?
on
Because that's
someone?
somebody that they actually spent a first round pick on to acquire, and now his deal is up, and they're gonna have to make a decision on him. Outside of him being
I would like to
injured,
keep D Mel. I would
yeah, I
like
would
to
like to
keep D
keep him
Mel.
too. Maybe him
Why
come
am
off
I
the bench.
forgetting one name though? Why am I forgetting one name? Campaign. Oh, Buddy Heald. Buddy Hield's the other one.
That's
Um,
another tricky one because I mean his effort in Game 6. I mean he looked like Buddy Hield. You know what I mean? That's the Buddy
yeah,
Hield that everybody expected. We're
and
not
I don't
expecting him to
blame
go
him
off
that
for
it
like
took
six
long
three
to get
pointers a
going
game.
because he had. I don't blame him that it took him a bit to get going because he had never been in the playoffs before. I think he looked phenomenal in the regular
I
season.
also think that's a little far fetched though, because in a way, like it's just basketball. You know what I mean? It's a little bit
It's a
more
different
intense.
animal. The playoffs is a different animal.
You shouldn't have
Um,
a clear drop off of being one of the considered. This is a quote unquote from Daryl Morey, one of the greatest 3-point shooters of all time. I don't know if I would go that far with him, but his numbers are pretty decent. But I don't think the way that he was playing beforehand, he looked like it was his first minutes of the season, not even just the transition to trying to play playoff basketball. That's where it gets tricky, though, is the first week of Buddy Hield being a Sixer, people are like, "Oh, let's re-sign him. I can't wait till Joel comes back. It's going to be a whole different animal with a perimeter shooter like this." And then he really tailed off, and then really had one game that brought him back to life and resurrected him, which was Game 6, and it was in the most important, crucial time. Even though that last shot was just, he had
yeah,
what, another
I have
two
no idea
seconds
what he
on
was
the
thinking
clock that
there.
he could have just like spotted up. Like he was open, but I mean, he's like chucking a half quarter when he had another 2 whole seconds that he could have spotted
Yeah,
up from that shot.
I don't know what he was thinking there, but I wouldn't hate to see Buddy Hield back in. And like I've mentioned, there is I've mentioned like four other names that they can keep there in the starting lineup next to Tyrese Maxey. But yeah,
But
free
if you're mentioning those wings and you have what 60 million available to you, like what would be your ideal situation? Because
Bron,
it's probably unlikely that they bring
Bron.
back Anthony Melton, Kelly Oubre, and Buddy Hield.
I would sign Bron. Whatever you got to do, make it happen. Bring
Oh
in
yeah.
LeBron James. And I tell you what, I don't think it's too far fetched. I think a lot of people, especially on Twitter and people that I know who I've talked about, I think people are looking at it as like a fever dream. And I think that's more so because of the name. Because it's LeBron James, it's like the idea of bringing in the second greatest player of all time to your team. Just like it's like, all right, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. But if you look at it, I really don't think it's far fetched. I think he's leaving Los Angeles. To me it doesn't look like he's going to stay there. He looks fed up with the situation over in LA. And LeBron. You know him throughout his whole career. Whenever he's playing with a team and things start to go south, he always leaves. He did it in Cleveland at the start of his career. He did it in Miami after they lost to the Spurs in the finals, and it wasn't that they just lost. I mean, they looked completely outmatched in that series. So then he left and returned to Cleveland, which that was going well for a while until Kyrie left. K Love was becoming washed up. They really had no talent outside of LeBron James. So he left and went to LA. And now things are not going well over there. So given LeBron's history, I think he leaves. I did see, of course, see the rumors about And I don't know how true this is. The lady who posted this to Twitter has like 800 followers, but the rumors are that Bronny James is going to be transferring to Villanova. And that if that is the case, that's another big reason why LeBron could come here. Basically, from what I hear right now, it's between if he leaves LA, it's between the Sixers and the Cavs. I don't see him going back to the Cavs for a third time. And I think Philly is quite intriguing.
Well,
He
the
gets
thing about LeBron was that before he went to the Lakers from Cleveland,
he
the
was
second team that he was
considering us.
considering, it was the
Yeah,
76ers.
that
He
was
even
the other
said that.
point. Yeah, that was the other point I forgot to mention. Before he even went to LA, he was considering Philly. So I mean, it's like we are an option that he has looked at. I don't think it's far fetched at all. And if
I
you
think it
come here,
just changes the entire culture of the team, and just really everybody has to be bought
yeah.
in and willing, and also everybody likes to call him Le GM and make fun of him taking over the reins, but he really does know what players to match together to get the best possible product on the
Well,
court.
Well, also, I think at this point in LeBron's career, I don't think if he comes here, he's going to be a GM. I mean, like, this isn't like any other time he's gone to a new team. It was the understanding you were going to get 4 years at least of prime LeBron James. This is him on the tail end of his career. He's got maybe a year or two left before he retires. I don't see him coming here and making crazy moves or anything like that. But if you're looking at it from his perspective, it's very intriguing to come here. You have, one of the top three players in the league in LeBron James. I mean, not LeBron James and Joel Embiid. You have one of the best up and coming guards in the league in Tyrese Maxey. I mean, you pair yourself with those two guys, who knows what can be accomplished. And it's not even like in Phoenix when you just throw together three random stars and it's like, here's our
Well, that's
victory.
what I like to mention too. Just LeBron fit wise would be the best
Oh,
possible match between
yeah.
having a guy at all three different levels, like a true guard, a combo guard, and Tyrese Maxey, who's he's not Kyrie Irving. I mean, Kyrie Irving's like a legendary, like once in a lifetime player with how great he is at finishing and shooting and doing everything. But Tyrese Maxey's on that evolution of being a really good combo scoring guard who's not a true point guard, and he's a little bit undersized to be considered a shooting guard. Then you have Joel Embiid, a true traditional big man that has an outside jumper and a jump shot and can back you down and do a bunch of different things and plays really good defense. And then you have LeBron as a small forward, power forward that can be interchanged then, and even at times with Joel Embiid off the court could even play center defensively for you. So I think that would be the best possible pairing and matchup that they can make on that level. Another name that's shot out there too, as well as much as I would love LeBron here, Kevin Durant, like you said, with the Suns. When the Suns I don't understand really that trade. They wanted to get to get a player that could possibly add to them and give them a trio of stars, but they have two guys that play the exact same position and it just doesn't work out. You know what I mean? And I don't think Bradley Beal's a really, really good player and he was averaging 30 points a year. But I don't know if he's on the same level as Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. So that
No, he's
pairing hasn't
certainly not.
yeah, that pairing really hasn't worked out so far. So maybe Kevin Durant, you want to talk about a guy asking out when things aren't going his way.
Yeah.
Who better? I love Kevin Durant too, but it's just the reality of the situation. If you're talking about a guy like that, Kevin Durant's the name. And he's definitely somebody. The thing about LeBron is I'll never question his hunger to win. But at this stage in his career, with what he does, whatever he does is just a cherry on top. You know what I mean? He should not be putting up these ridiculous numbers that he's putting up at this age. And I think Kevin Durant really truly believes that he still is in his prime and will be trying to hunt down another ring to solidify himself as the all-time greats. LeBron, everything that he does now is just, a little bit on top of the accolades and everything. You call him the second best player of all time. 45% of people call him the first best player of all time when they pulled players of who the best player is. So, I mean, there's nothing more for LeBron to do for his career, but to cement themselves. Kevin Durant probably needs a little bit more on his resume, even though he's an all-time great as well. So Kevin Durant could be another name that's
I
floated out there.
I
There's
will
also
say
a
one
room.
thing. Sorry, I'll let you get back to that, but I will say one thing first, real quick. The one other thing I want to mention about LeBron James' fit here is, I think the Sixers could really benefit from LeBron's playmaking. They don't really have a true playmaker. I mean, Tyrese Maxey, he's more of a scoring guard, not much of a playmaker. Embiid's playmaking has improved, but if they can get the solidified playmaking from LeBron James that he brings to the table at this stage in his
Yeah,
career, I
there was
think that would
nobody
be a
on the
home
roster
run.
that could actually just take the ball up and
Mhm.
literally do their thing. And LeBron
Yeah,
lets a lot of the
exactly.
Lakers just do that. A lot of the times, LeBron lets Austin Reeves just take the ball up the court because he knows that he can play off and off ball if he needs to. But even with some of the talent of the finishers, I feel like the Sixers just didn't have enough people that could just get to the rack when they needed to. And that's like you saw
Yeah,
what was Josh Hart doing the entire series outside of hitting open threes. He was driving to the rack, attacking at Joel Embiid, Dante DiVincenzo, the same thing. The Sixers didn't really have anybody that just will take the ball at the top of the key and try and force their way in and try and make a play. And that's just like why I was calling for Tobias Harris to maybe show a little bit of that, but he's just almost like scared of the ball.
yeah.
Kelly Oubre kind of was a little erratic
Kelly
at
Oubre,
times.
listen, Kelly Oubre. If I had to name the two Sixers players who are good at attacking the rim, I would say it's Tyrese Maxey and Kelly Oubre. Outside of that, there
And then
really
outside of that,
isn't
it's a bunch of
anybody.
old dudes that just don't have it like that. They
Yeah,
have to just get their shot spot up for them. So I
yeah.
liked what
It's
Kyle Lowry. A lot of people were upset with what how Kyle Lowry kind of ended the series. He ended also at 0 points in that game with Tobias Harris, and he was starting. Um, didn't play as many minutes, but they were asking a lot of minutes of him. But he had flashes at times. I wouldn't be opposed to bringing Kyle Lowry back if it's for a cheap deal.
I think he's too old. I mean, when you get
But
to this age, each
that's the type
year.
of player that they need.
But
An
listen,
OG and Dame.
you're not getting the level of play you got from Kyle Lowry this year. When players get this old, each year is a more significant decline in level of play than the last. So you're not getting the Kyle Lowry you saw this year. You're getting a worse version of that if you bring him back next year. And like I mentioned, there's so many other guards they can bring back. So I don't really think I would keep Kyle Lowry around. I mean, it's great to have a Philadelphia native around, but I wouldn't bring him back. I will say, you know, speaking of LeBron James, the other thing I wanted to say real quick is I've always hated LeBron James. I'm not gonna hide that for a lot of reasons. So I never like to see him win another ring every year. I pray on his downfall. Um, but if he comes to the Sixers, I don't give a damn. I do not. He can tie Michael Jordan, my GOAT, in rings for all I care if it means us are the ones winning said rings. But I think what would be just the ideal starting lineup, which I would just be thrilled to see, would be Tyrese Maxey, any one of the guards I've really mentioned, maybe Melton and Maxey, Maxey and Buddy Hield. So let's just say, for sake of argument, Tyrese Maxey, Buddy Hield, Kelly Oubre at the 3, LeBron at the 4, and Joel Embiid. I think that would be one hell of a starting lineup that would really wreak havoc. Um, but yeah, moving ahead to the other possible players. What rumor were you going to mention?
Honestly, forget where I was at.
I'm guessing you were probably going to either mention Jimmy Butler or Paul George, is my guess.
Well, yeah, those are the other. I mentioned them in the beginning. Brandon Ingram is also another name that's been floated
Brandon
out there a
Ingram, I
little
would
bit.
like. He's no like big time star player bringing in here, but
He's a
Brandon
good
Ingram, I would like.
scorer. And I like the idea of that. It's just I don't really know if that puts them over the top. I
No, I
honestly
don't
think
think it does.
if they can get a guy like OG Anunoby or Pascal Siakam, I think that's actually and two guys that were coached by Nick Nurse. I think those two options. I don't think the Knicks are anywhere near close to letting Anunoby walk. And depending on if the Pacers advance to the Eastern Conference Finals, they're definitely not going to let Siakam walk. So. But those are just some names that are floated out there. you're going to have to get a veteran point guard. So what they need is a veteran backup point guard. There's guys like Russell Westbrook that's available. So the Clippers aren't going to keep everybody.
No,
James Harden.
no, Westbrook, hell no. I am not bringing him on my roster.
I mean,
Absolutely
it's
not.
you have to look at the impact deeper than the on court play, and I think Westbrook still plays at a high level. He's just in a different role with the Clippers, but he also brings an intensity, and they need
I would
somebody like
rather
that.
keep
They didn't
Heal.
have
I would rather
anybody.
keep
Kyle
Buddy
Lowry
Heal
is
than
that, but
D'Anthony Melton, and
I mean,
bring
as much as I
D'Anthony
liked
Melton off
Anthony
the
Melton, man,
bench.
he
I would
and
take him over Russell Westbrook any day of the week. I would take D'Anthony Melton over him.
I think primarily based on aged, but outside of that, there's
Well,
not really
age is a big part of it. Also, I like the shooting of D'Anthony Melton. I think the way this roster is built, especially with Joel Embiid down low, you need to surround him with shooters, not a guy who at this point in his career is basically like another Ben Simmons in the fact
Well, I'm
that
just looking more so when you're trying to rebuild a roster from literally having two guys on there, you're gonna have to have some veteran presence too. So I'm not advocating for Russell Westbrook at the top of the free agency list, but I'm just
I
saying
am
more so.
advocating that we do not bring Russell Westbrook here.
Yeah, I'm just saying about bringing in a veteran that can actually, because you're not just going to go out and try and get the youngest guys possible and just build a roster that way. You're going to have to build an identity as well. And people try and question Joel Embiid for his leadership, and Tyrese might be a little bit too young to be a leader and really be impactful as a leader. So they're going to have to figure out something as a veteran presence to be able to get the guys going and everything. So I mean, there's some different names out there as well. I mean, if you need like a shooter. Luke Kennard, he's on a team option. There's some guys out there. So Josh Richardson has a player option with Miami. Maybe he opts out. That's like $3 million.
That was a disaster. That was a disaster the first time around. I ain't going with Josh Richardson. I ain't bringing Jay Rich back here. I do think there are good options out there. I mean, I like the idea of Luke Kennard. That's not a bad idea. I do like the idea of them keeping some of the guys they currently have. One guy who I really hope to see more of next year is actually Ricky Council. I think he looked really good on the time he spent on the court. But yeah,
I do like the progression of him. I just don't know if there's like any more past what he's already giving you. I don't really see that as much, but I would love for him to prove me wrong. Another veteran, DeMar DeRozan's contract's up, so he was
that's not
subject to
very
a lot of
option.
trade rumors. That'd be somebody that's older in age that could be a possibility, but we're talking about an older guy. Maybe you get him for a little bit of a discount, but it's still going to be a lot of your money spent there. Spencer Dinwiddie. I still feel like he can play pretty solid basketball for you. He was in a weird role with the Lakers, but that could be somebody that can bring in as a backup point guard. Some of the forwards, Sadiq Bey is a restricted free agent, but he can light it up from deep, and he's another Villanova guy. So maybe if
I
the Knicks
think
don't throw the bag out there for him, knowing how much they love Villanova guys, but there's it's not the most loaded free agency class that we've seen. They also have the draft. They have pick 16 and I think pick 41 in the second round, so they can make some moves from
listen,
that.
they can do something interesting with pick 16. They can even one thing that I do like about the fact that they have a ton of cap space going into the off season is, typically if you package picks together to make a big trade, you got to throw somebody in there who's making a lot of money to make the contracts work out. But considering they have the money, if there's a trade out there to be made, they can just throw in pick 16 as well as those two future picks they got from the Clipper trade to get just about anybody who becomes available. So I do like that they do have an option to trade pick 16 to put it into a
And
trade
some
for
trades,
somebody big.
sometimes you just can't overthink it, and you just got to make the move that you personally believe is best for the team. And like, think about all of the talk that was around that Rudy Gobert trade for all those first round picks a couple years ago, and then look how it's working out now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
No one thought that.
I'll be honest. I did not think that was going to work out with Rudy Gobert
Well,
and Karl Anthony
if you
Towns
singularly
down
look at it, and
low.
you're like all those draft picks for Rudy Gobert. I mean, he has a defensive player of the year,
I just
but
mean I didn't think the pairing of Rudy Gobert and Clay Thompson. I mean, not Clay Thompson. Karl Anthony Towns
that's somebody else
was
that's
going to
also going
work
to be
out.
available too. Is
Hell,
like
that's another hell no for me. I mean, he got benched at one point this season. He looked really, really bad. He looks
no, he
washed
was
up.
not. Yeah, but that was also highlighted in a certain period of time. He actually ended up like playing pretty well for the entire season as a whole, and got himself back to the starting lineup.
I would, give him a smaller contract, not anything like a max deal or anything.
Well, the thing
Um,
about Clay that, like, talking about age-wise is, Clay is just an offensive player now. Defensively, he used to be superb before those 2
yeah,
injuries. He used to be one of the best defenders. He used to cover Kyrie Irving in the finals when they would match up.
yeah,
That's how good a defender he was,
he
but
was. I mean, he was a big reason why that Warriors team used to play such great defense. You had him out there with Andre Iguodala and Draymond Green, three terrific defensive players that used to be out there on the court together. Um, but he's just shooting now, and if he's already showing cold slumps at this stage in his career, then the possibility of that getting even worse throughout the progress of a max contract. I don't like the look of that. I don't want to bring in anybody who by the fourth and fifth year of their contract we're like, we need to get rid of this guy, because
well,
I don't want to have
that's
to
the
go through
danger
that
of this
again.
offseason,
And
though.
that's why I was gonna say I do not want to bring in Paul George. I don't. That's a guy I definitely don't want to bring, because
I think Paul George might
he's
be.
going to get a 5-year max, and I
Yeah,
don't
but
want to give
that's the
that
same
to him.
thing as Jimmy Butler. I would rather have Paul George than Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy Butler would be somebody that's also up there in age,
Hmm.
and by the
I'd rather
time
bring in Jimmy Buckets. I mean, that's a guy who has proven he can win in the playoffs. I mean, he's carried his team to the finals twice. Paul George, teamed up with Kawhi, Russell Westbrook, James Harden. He still can't get anything done. I mean, he spent multiple years with just Kawhi before, and he couldn't get anything done. Before that, he was in OKC with a prime Russell Westbrook, along with an aged Carmelo Anthony, but still couldn't get anything done.
also finished third in MVP voting when he was in OKC, though, so it's not like it was his play that
But
was hindered.
he can't get look. I don't think Paul George can get it done in the playoffs. And when we already have a guy like Joel Embiid who famously can't get it done in the playoffs, we can't be bringing in other stars who were also famous for not getting it
Well,
done in the
that's where we
playoffs.
raise the
They
question
already did
now
that
is
with James Harden. James
can
Harden
we
was
raise the
another
question
star.
now, is this just not the free agency period to spend? And just kinda like, because you're only
Here's the
wasting
thing.
years of
Here's the
Joel Embiid
thing.
in his prime.
I would say I would agree with you, but I think they're running out of time, and I don't really think they have the luxury of waiting another year to spend money in free agency. That's why I think if they can somehow make it work and bring in one of these aging stars on like a 2-year deal, if that's somehow possible, I think that would be the move. Or if they can bring in LeBron. I mean, that's really like the only move that, like, if they make that move, I'm like, holy shit, look out for this next season. There's plenty of other moves that they can make where I'm like, all right, cool, I'm feeling good about this. Such as younger guys who aren't like solidified stars like Brandon Ingram and Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby, guys like that, who it's like, all right, yeah, I feel good about this. But LeBron is the only signing that if they make it, I'm like, look out. So I think that's what they need to do. They need to find a
I
way
mean,
to
there's
get
always
LeBron.
gonna be somebody upset with their situation. 2 situations that we look at now would be probably the Clippers and the Suns, and who can make their way out, but I mean, Paul George is gonna be a free agent, same with James Harden. James Harden's obviously not coming back. Um, Devin Booker would be a 2 guard. I don't think the Sixers would have anything to trade for Devin Booker. Kevin Durant might be possibility. You could trade draft picks for him, but that doesn't really make sense, and I wouldn't really want Bradley Beal. Brandon Ingram
No,
would also be via trade because he's not a free agent, so that's just more so of the Pelicans not being able to get over the hump with him. But why would they break up CJ McCollum? Because it looked like they would have a chance if Zion was healthy, but that's also another star.
but
So the
but
thing
he will
about
be healthy. That's the
I
other
mean, the
thing.
thing is, there's a bunch of injury-prone superstars in the NBA. It's not just Joel Embiid. He's just the best injury-prone player in the league.
That is a
You know what
good
I mean?
point. That is a
I
very
mean,
good
there's
point.
think about how many Kawhi Leonard, Zion Williamson, like the list goes on about players. Jimmy Butler gets hurt a decent amount too. I mean, there's just a bunch of injury prone players. I mean, at the end of the day, I always think about how crazy it is that they play on hardwood floor. So anytime they're hitting the ground, you know what I mean? That just like, did you see the Maxi Kleber injury?
That is a good point. That's actually something I've not even really fully
Yeah, it's so
considered.
simplistic, but, like, when you really think about it, it's like, damn, they're really just like you stop and roll your ankle on, like, a hardwood floor, just like your elbow hits on the ground. Did you see the, Maxi Kleber injury?
I did not see that. No.
He went down and, landed on his arm, like, full shoulder
Ugh,
dislocation. Just
ugh.
gross and disgusting. So, yeah, the Sixers definitely have their work cut out for them. I mean, this might be the free agency class that I mean, you always love to have money to spend and everything, but it's unrealistic to think that they're gonna be able to string together a bunch of one-year deals to bring in guys. But at the end of the day, they're gonna most likely have to overpay not overpay. They're going to have to give extra years on a contract to an aging player to really
Yeah,
upgrade their
I don't want
situation
to do
next
that. That's why I'm saying bring in Braun. Anyhow, we gotta move on. We gotta move on to Phillies talk because they are the hottest team in baseball. They have the best record in baseball. They are actually in first place in the month of May. Even with the Trey Turner injury aside, things are looking really well, and we got to talk about it.
Yeah, the Trey Turner injury is obviously very upsetting, but they've been prepped for this situation. I mean, Bryson Stott made his first appearance at shortstop. Topper was saying that he believes Edmundo Sosa could play that role, but more so that Edmundo Sosa hasn't been an everyday player for quite some time now. So he's going to ease him into that. Whit Merrifield took over second base, and this is why you make one of those Whit Merrifield signings. And Edmundo Sosa has proven to be a very reliable player. I mean, Sosa's played pretty well in different stints in playoffs when he's had time to play in the playoffs with the Phillies over the past couple of years. So I feel confident that they're making the right moves out there. Everybody else, Bryce has hit what 2 home runs since Trey Turner went down with
Three,
injury.
three. He
Has it
said
been 3?
Oh, no, it's 2, it's 2. He's
It's
had
2.
10 at bats, 3 hits, and 2 home runs, both, being 3-run homers in back-to-back games. Bryce Harper looks like he's catching fire. This has been the best Schwarber has performed early in the season since becoming a Philly. Usually, he just slumps until June and then gets hot, but he's at 9 home runs so far.
Well, he's got. I
Uh
mean, all he does is hit home runs. Outside of that, he's not.
But that's what I mean, like, it usually takes him a while to get going
Yeah.
with
And we
the
know the
home
June
runs.
Schwarber uptick is coming in a month or so due time. So
Yeah, and
the batting
even
order did change
Toski
up a
had a
little bit
good game
too.
today.
Yeah, the batting order changed up a little bit with Trey Turner and that 2 hole being out. So now JT's taken over and he's looked actually pretty good in the 2 hole. Just kind of weird
And
batting the
Bohm's
catcher
looked
in the 2
great.
holes. So
Bohm has looked phenomenal in
I
the
mean,
4
Bohm
hole.
is playing himself into the MVP race right now. If
Bohm
he hits,
has been out of his mind. He's
but
been
this is
it's a
what is
shame his
expected of a
hit
third
streak
overall
ends
pick. This
today.
is the
Yeah.
ceiling for a third overall pick. This is what you
But it
expect.
is regardless of that, it is great to see him hitting very, very well. It is a
Well, I mean,
shame his
everything I felt
hit
like all
streak
the
comes to
times it
an
was
end today.
solidified with the roles on the team. You had the 2 young guys in Bohm and Stott that were just
And
gonna.
Marsh, the 3 young guys, the
Well, I'm talking
daycare.
about when like the homegrown guys. I mean, Marsh has really been gradually, exponentially, his growth in his game has really went up with it being a Philadelphia Philly. But from the guys that have grown up in the organization of the Phillies, it was Bohm and Stott, and then you had the superstars on the team that would handle the rest, and they just had to be decent and just had to give you moments. But now we see, even though Stott's not playing the greatest this season, he's having games where he really takes over, like that 2 home
Yeah.
run game, and then boom, just in that cleanup spot. He should have been batting cleanup this entire time.
I think you're right on that. Bohm is just a guy who, if there's runners on base, he can hit him in. This is what Bohm is great at. Is just
Led the team in RBIs last year,
batting
and he
with
doesn't even hit home runs really either. He hits home runs, but he doesn't hit them as often for a guy that bats runs in as well as he does. So
his I forget what exactly his batting average with runners in scoring position is, but it's very, very high. I mean, this is a specialty. It's just getting hits when there's guys on base and driving in runs. And I mean, the simplistic way to look at what you want out of your cleanup hitter is home runs. But really, I mean, you just need a guy who's going to drive in runs when there's guys on base.
and it doesn't
That's
hurt having two guys batting in front of you that can crank bombs at any point in time in Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber. And we hadn't even really
yeah.
seen the power in Trey Turner. So maybe when he comes back from injury, maybe we'll see a little bit of uptick in the power because he only had one home run on the entire season.
Was that all it was?
Yeah, I think it was only one. But
Hmm.
also, they're getting contributions from unlikely suspects. And last Tuesday, I think the game was when they blew a lead and then had Nick Castellanos come up and tie the ball game, and then
Oh yeah,
Johan
Rojas
Rojas hit a
took
home run. And
hit
that's in
the
a big
go ahead
moment in the
home
ninth
run.
inning of a big home run. In a inning that you already got a home run from Castellanos. A home run from Castellanos isn't that crazy, but a home run during the 2024 season for Nick Castellanos is pretty crazy. He hit his first double today. First
That
double of the
couldn't have
season
been.
today.
No, that wasn't his first double.
Yes, it was. Look it
I
up.
I, I
Go
gotta I
research it
gotta
right now and
fact
waste
check
30
that.
seconds of your time. Go
I
waste 30
have to
seconds of your
fact
time.
check that. I don't know if I buy that. Give me a second
I
here.
mean, the truth is the truth, my guy.
I don't think I buy this. One second. I got it up here. Uh Nick Castellanos. Oh my god. Oh, it was the triple I was thinking of. I could have, yeah, that's right. I
First
could have
extra, yeah,
sworn
that was extra base hit.
I
So
could have sworn I had seen him hit a double earlier in the season, but yeah, it was a triple. That's right. Wow. And early last season, that was what he was doing. Remember, he got off to that hot start last
well, early
season. He
last
wasn't hitting
season,
home
he
runs,
earned
but he was hitting a
NL.
lot of doubles. He
Yeah,
was
he earned an
knocking.
NL All-Star
Yeah.
candidacy from how he played last season. So I feel like they're still holding out hope that he can just be a consistent hitter. He's had some games. He's had multi-hit games recently. It's
He had
just
a
he
great
right
game
now
today. He had two
walked
hits,
twice in a double.
including the double. No, three walks. He had three walks. I or no, maybe two. I could have sworn might have
I'm
been
pretty sure it
three.
was two. But I mean, at
You
the end of
might
the
be right.
day,
You
if
might
he
be right.
just
You
does
might be
not
right.
swing at that outside slider, I mean, he would probably have a lot more walks.
Speaking of sliders, how about that reliever for San Francisco? I think it was last night. The I forget what the guy's name was, but he had the nastiest slider I've seen in a long
Yeah, they just
time.
completed the 4-game sweep on the Giants, and I know the Giants are a little tailed off on their talent, but I mean, to sweep the Giants, I really don't take that too lightly. That makes it 10 straight games at Citizens
And it's
Bank
a
Park that they've
4-game
won as
sweep.
well.
Yeah, and it's a 4-game sweep, which is even harder. It's 6 straight wins. They're just on fire right now. And you can talk about, the lack of opponents that they've played, but I mean to be playing this well, uh, you know, you certainly have to be a very good baseball team to be playing. I mean, baseball is a sport
There's
where
nothing really too much to complain about right now. I mean, you don't expect
no,
1 through 9 to be the most perfect
the
in the
only thing to
situation that
complain
we're in right
about
now.
is the only thing to complain about is maybe Taiwan Walker, but he didn't look that bad last night. He just,
Got a
I
lot of
think,
strikeouts, which I didn't really expect because usually he's more of a contact pitcher and kind of just puts it in play and does it that way. I mean, I think the only thing to complain about Taiwan Walker is taking Spencer Turnbull out and replacing him with him. But at the end of the day, I mean, Taiwan Walker's making big money, so that's probably really the only reason that he's back in the starting lineup. I don't know if Topper truly believes that he's a better pitcher, but also you got to think Spencer Turnbull pitched, I think, less than 60 innings last year. So there's also, a grace period in between that of just trying to keep them healthy and relative. But Zach Wheeler is not a fan of the 6-man rotation. So when your ace and arguably the best pitcher in the MLB right now is saying that he's not a fan of the 6-man rotation, I expect not to really see that
yeah,
anytime soon. Which
and
is kind of
that's the
crazy to think
thing.
also, like, he's, like, advocating to pitch more often, which is something that you want
Well,
out of
I
running
because
backs.
I think it's like I think there's such thing as too much rest. You wanna stay in the groove of things. So if he's more comfortable pitching every 5 games, then that's what you got to roll with because you need your ace at his best. Today he was at his best. Pitched 7 innings, 4 hits, 1 run, 11 strikeouts. Typical Zach Wheeler masterclass. Really only threw one bad pitch all day.
And everybody in
Um,
his last outing, what, he went, like, 5 1/3 or 5 2/3 and allowed 1 run, and everybody's like, "Oh, he's having an off day." Like, that's a good day for any
yeah,
pitcher in the entire MLB.
Yeah, and then just look at that. That is how he performed in a 6-man rotation, and then now in a 5-man. That's what he was able to accomplish today. And last year was, still not a bad season at all, but wasn't his best season last year. And they did spend a good amount of time last season running a 6-man rotation. So listen, whatever Zach Wheeler is comfortable doing, keep doing it. And even at that, the 5-man rotation, everyone was pitching phenomenal during the 5-man rotation. You have
Yeah,
three
Ranger
pitchers
Suarez
with
is
sub
coming off.
2 ERAs.
Yeah,
Three
Ranger
pitchers
Suarez
with
is
sub
coming off
2
a
ERAs.
NL Pitcher of the Month.
Yeah.
So, it seems like
Ranger has
every
looked
every,
phenomenal.
uh, top of the rotation day and the 3rd of the rotation day, it's almost a guaranteed win. Aaron Nola, at worst, allows a couple home runs, which he needs to definitely cut down on, but, like, at most, he allows, like,
That's
4
what he's
runs,
known for at this
on a
point.
bad day, and most times, he allows 1 to 2 runs, and, he pitches superb too. And then you get to the back end of the, lineup. I think the last go around, Christopher Sanchez didn't look the greatest, but that was pretty much the only flare up that
I
he's had in
think
the entire season. I think the bullpen is still a little bit questionable because the bullpen just in general, Gregory
Kirkling has looked
Soto, I
great.
was so hyped to acquire Gregory Soto, and he just looks like a distant memory of himself nowadays. But I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah,
But
he didn't
um,
look he didn't look the best last season either. Um,
And it seems like Marte, who just got injured, he's also somebody that just like allows really badly timed home runs at certain times. Like he'll allow an absolute nuke after he's been pitching pretty well. So they need to shore up the bullpen a little bit. They've said that they're a little bit short-handed on right-handed bullpen members, so maybe that's a move that they go and search for around the trade deadline. But outside of that, I don't really think there's any drastic need changes, and just more
um,
so stay the course and par the course.
2 things I want to say to your points. As far as Christopher Sanchez goes, um, unlike Taiwan Walker, Christopher Sanchez is not making a buttload of money. So I think if Christopher Sanchez continues to struggle, I don't even know if it's fair to say continues to struggle because he had one bad outing. But if this leads to more rough outings from Christopher Sanchez, then I think it's a no-brainer to then move him to the bullpen and bring Spencer Turnbull back to the starting rotation. And as
Well,
far as
that's
the
like what you had the luxury of doing too, is between it's like nothing solidified outside of the top 3, you know what I mean? So, but you also
yeah,
don't wanna mess with the rhythm of what's going on, but the good thing is we do have 6 pitchers that could pitch, so, that's always a good
yeah,
thing. There's
it's
always the
it's a good
possibility of
problem
injury.
to have.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to say in terms of the bullpen, I think I talked about this guy last week on the podcast, and that is Orion Kerkering, who we've seen more of him now. Since being called up, and he has looked just as good as I've expected him to look. He finished off the game today, finishing things off. He's only given up 1 run since he's been called back up. If I can think off the top of my head, I want to say he's pitched 8 innings now. I think he's had 8 appearances out of the pen. I think he's pitched 8 innings and has given up just 1 run, if I'm not mistaken. So he has looked terrific. I think outside of Jose Alvarado, I think Kirkering right now is the guy I'm most confident in outside of Alvarado.
I like Matt Strom. I wasn't the biggest Hoffman fan, but, Hoffman's definitely
He's
grown on
looking
me a
good
little bit.
now. He actually, that's another guy who I'm starting to grow to like is Jeff Hoffman. I
Yeah,
think
I
he
mean,
can
last year I
continue
felt
that at
like he
the
gave up
moment.
like the worst timely home runs, kind of like Marte is doing this year. But um, yeah, they have a lot of different options. I think that would be the first place that they look at come the trade deadline in a couple months is to shore up the bullpen a
It's
little bit. But I mean, that's like what everybody's looking for around that time. So I mean, we've seen big names get traded around the trade deadline the past couple years in that department. So maybe they can get some help. And there's probably some teams that also don't want to give the Phillies. Bullpen help, you know what I mean? Because they actually see them as a true threat because of how good the 1 through 9 lineup is. So, yeah, I mean, right now, life is pretty much good. The best record in the MLB, 25-11,
I can't
25
believe it.
wins.
I truly cannot believe what, I mean, granted, this team always plays great in the postseason when we're talking about recent history. But I mean, the regular season struggles have really plagued us. And I just can't believe we're currently sitting here with the best record in baseball.
Do you think they get to
Um,
100 wins?
I don't want to I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. I mean, 100 wins is
Well, I
no
mean,
easy
that's the prediction
feat.
that everybody had to begin the season. There were some people saying
I don't
that
want to say
they're going to
100
win over
wins.
105. I thought that it was doable to win 100.
I don't want to say anything crazy like that because that's just how it goes with Philly sports. You start hyping up a team like, oh, they're gonna do this and they're gonna do that, and then that's just when things fall apart. So I don't want to start saying anything crazy. I just want to say, things are going very well right now, and I'm really enjoying watching them. They do start a series tomorrow against the Toronto Blue Jays. So that it is another favorable series for them. So I'm looking forward to that. I want to see
And the thing
real.
is too, like all these like we're talking about favorable series that they have looking ahead and everything, but I kind of have just accepted that it's not even just like you can like look at it series by series, but with the sweeps, they swept the Padres and they just swept the Giants. Those are two teams that could make the playoffs this year. So I don't even think it's like a lack of competition that they're playing. I just think they're literally playing that well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and it's also not like this is a mediocre roster winning a lot of games. I mean, these are very talented players that they have performing this well. So it makes sense, I mean, any team led by guys like Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, Alec Boehm, JT Realmuto, Trey Turner, although he's injured right now, but he's only been injured for a few games. I mean, and of course the starting rotation, the ace caliber pitchers they have. It makes sense why they're winning this many games. It doesn't feel like it's just, oh, they just have an easy schedule. Like, no, I mean, the easy schedule of course helps. Of course it helps, but um, a large part of it is the talent on this team. Looking ahead to the pitching matchups of this series against Toronto.
Good Nola to start tomorrow, right?
No, that's what I would have thought. It's actually Christopher Sanchez versus Jose Barrios. Not a favorable pitching matchup, in my opinion. Jose Barrios is sporting a 1.44 ERA this
Yeah,
season.
he's definitely. I mean, and that lineup too is just hit or miss. I mean, the Toronto Blue Jays could hang 10 on you at any point in time with
Yeah.
some of the position players that they have. So that series is definitely going to be something to look out for our pitching staff.
Yeah, and then Wednesday is when Nola makes his appearance. Nola is 4-1 this season, which I feel like Aaron Nola, no matter how well he
What did we
pitches,
say
he
his
always
over
has a
under was?
poor
Was it
record.
10.5 wins or 11.5 wins?
I forget, but he's on good pace right now. So Wednesday's Aaron Nola against Bassett, and then Friday, wait, oh, it's just a 2-game set. Okay, 2-game series. Then they're
Yeah,
off
because they had
Thursday,
the
and
four
then they
game
play.
set, and then they roll around. They're
Yeah,
all
they
going to
do
play.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they usually do that against American League teams. I feel like Toronto more common than not with those 2-game sets against in interleague matchups, but yeah, and then Friday they start a new series against the Marlins. So hopefully they can just keep on
And the
winning.
Marlins are horrific. They just traded a
And
Luis
then they play
Arraez.
the Mets after that. Who's after the Mets? Who we got? The Nationals. Who's next? Oh,
The
the
Nationals, the
Rangers. And
Nationals
then
aren't
we
the
got the
same Nationals.
Rangers.
The Nationals are like
Oh, and then we
mediocre
got the
now.
Rockies, though. So we have a tough series against the Rangers, but then we face the Rockies, who are currently only have
All right, we're looking way
eight
too
wins.
far ahead. Let's talk about the
Then the
next series.
Giants. Okay.
Yeah, you're looking
One
at like
thing,
months down the
actually,
line.
one thing I do want to mention, because this is something you mentioned on last week's podcast, is how many wins Taiwan Walker had last season. Because it just last season it was just no matter what, when he pitched, the Phillies gave him a ton of run support, and so far he's 2-0, 2 starts, two
I mean,
wins.
it is what it is, though. Like, if that's the case, I mean, it's hard to take a guy out of the lineup like that because, I mean, at the end of the day, he's not pitching horribly if they're winning. It's not like he's throwing the game. He's just not as good as the top of the staff. That's just what it is, and that's why everybody outside of the top three is
I
interchangeable.
mean, I think his first start was pretty bad. They still won the game. I
Yeah, no,
wouldn't
it
say,
definitely
oh,
wasn't
they
ideal, but
still
he looked
won
good
though.
the other
But
night. And I'm not advocating for him because I don't really care what they do. I'm just more so justifying. I think everybody knows at this point that it's pretty much like the reason why he gets the benefit of the doubt is because they have so much invested in him.
I just think it's astonishing how easy it is for him to collect wins on his pitching record. I think it's quite amusing. He's so far 2 for 2, two starts, 2 wins. Hopefully it continues. Hopefully, no matter how he pitches, they just put up a bunch of runs, and that's the thing too, is like, not to be too superstitious, but if you have a pitcher who just every time he pitches, he gets a ton of run support, then it's like, you got Taiwan Walker outing coming up. You can expect a lot of runs from the Phillies. I don't think it's like too far fetched to believe in that sort of luck, because you look at a guy like Cole Hamels, who throughout his entire career never got any run support. So I mean, and people believe in
That was an
that
issue
on
with
the
Aaron
flip
Nola for
on the
when Aaron
yeah,
Nola
and
was
and
on
that was the other guy I
the
was going to
staff too.
mention. So if you're able to believe in, that sort of bad luck, if you're able to believe in that sort of luck on the other side of the coin, then it's not too far fetched to believe in, some pitcher just having great luck, and he's always going to have great
But
run
it is
support.
still alarming though that they weren't willing to give him any starts in the playoffs at any round,
That
and
is
they're
very
still
alarming.
like
Yes. Yeah.
because I think that might
Mhm,
be the
mhm.
case moving forward for this year too. But the thing
But
is,
the
they
other
still have.
thing, sorry,
Go on.
continue.
No, you can go on.
All I was going to say is, but the other thing too is, once you get to the postseason, you don't need a 5-man rotation, so it's not
Well,
a
yeah, no,
true
that's what I
rivalry.
was gonna say too. And there was also they were in a weird period of time where they had Ranger as long relieving at certain times 2 years ago, and now he's completely solidified himself as you know arguably. I don't even know if it's an argument anymore. He's one of the best pitchers in the National League, and it just is what it is. I'm more confident in Ranger Suarez than I am in Aaron Nola.
Oh, at 1000%.
And I'm
Aaron,
that's not downplaying Aaron Nola because a lot of people do like to downplay Aaron Nola, but I think Aaron Nola is a pretty above average pitcher in the league. Definitely one of the best in the National League. Not per se one of the best in the entire league, but he's definitely in that top 15 to top 20 range. Zach Wheeler is just one of the best there is. You know what I mean? If not right now in this exact moment, the best pitcher in the entire MLB with all the injuries going on. So um, I think they're in a really good spot, especially with that and just it adds, it's a cherry on top to each pitcher that is able to pitch. But when it comes to playoff baseball, it's kind of like playoff basketball. You know what I mean? It's nice to have the 12th and 13th guy in your basketball rotation playing well throughout the season, like a Ricky Council. But at the end of the day, those guys really don't see the time of day in the playoffs. So, but this year, maybe if they play themselves into one of the top seeds and they don't even have to play in the first round, then they get some extra rest for those guys. But I don't know if that would benefit Zach Wheeler, who doesn't like too much rest. So maybe they'll have to simulate a game in between
I
times like that. But
I say what you do with Zach Wheeler is you call up Lehigh Valley, and you say, hey, Zach Wheeler's going to come down there and pitch a game for you, just to keep him fresh.
imagine
Um,
him mowing down. Imagine him mowing down Triple
oh,
A.
he would pitch a
That
perfect
was like
game.
who was it? Was it who was at the minor league? Bryce, I think, hit a bomb when he was down there. But it was like, wasn't it Tatis that hit like 3 home runs in one game when he was down at AAA on like an assignment coming back from injury? I think it was when he got suspended and they put him back from assignment and he hit like 3 home runs in one game or something crazy. And he was just taking everybody yard. So, I mean,
Yeah, unfortunately, Lehigh Valley season ends in the
yeah, I was
beginning
about to
of
say the timeline
September.
doesn't even really
Yeah,
match up
no,
with
the
the
timeline
baseball.
doesn't match up. It would be cool though, but yeah, that's why September call-ups are a thing. Um
But let's nitpick a little bit. What is your least favorite thing about the Phillies right now? If we're trying to look at the negative side, because we can sit here and talk about how they're top 10 in pretty much every single team category on offense and defense, and even runs scored, which it seemed like for a while that they were barely scoring runs, and now they've really upticked it. Obviously the injury to Trey Turner, we can talk about that. But what is like the one thing that you're not happy with the direction of the Phillies right now? Is there anything that you can really point out?
I mean, I think we've already mentioned it. I think it's the bullpen. I think the bullpen is a bigger issue than people realize because the team's success has kind of overshadowed it. But when you look at the bullpen, when already early into the season they've had to send guys down to the minor leagues, multiple guys down to the minors because they weren't
Or
pitching
just
well.
get them all Connor Brogdon, just gave him a plane ticket, just get out of
Yeah,
here.
and you're just mixing guys in and out of that bullpen because you only have a couple of guys in there you can rely on. I think that's a legitimate problem. It's just not a problem I really want to talk about right now because things are going so well. Why would we harp on the bullpen? But if we do have to nitpick, yeah, I would definitely say the bullpen is a bit of an issue. And then just recently,
Well, real quickly though, the bullpen is the issue. Obviously, I agree with that as well. Do you think it's being the way it's being managed is the issue, or do you think it's just the overall the way that the
I think
players are
it's
playing?
I think it's the talent in the bullpen. And another reason why it doesn't
Like,
even
do you
seem
think
like
it's
a
like the
big
right thing to not have a set closer, like to like establish roles like how before in years past, Craig Kimbrell, as much as people love to hate him now, but at the time he was the set closer and you
freaking
knew what you were
bullpen.
going to get out of him. Do you think that they need somebody in that exact role to really solidify things
I would
around them, or do you think that has to do with the chaos going on in the bullpen? I mean, they haven't been the worst in the world, and they usually have a big um, lead and they're not facing a deficit where they allow these things. It's not like they blow things. It's more so when the game's really close, and that's kind of where they falter a little bit. But do you think they're not having set roles for all the relievers is what is the issue?
I mean, talking about that. So I mean, real quick, I one thing you just mentioned, I think that's a big reason why the bullpen doesn't seem like an issue right now is because they're constantly just blowing teams out and the bullpen doesn't have to do much. And then when the bullpen does give up runs, it's some back end guy who is like, well, he gave up runs in garbage time. Who cares? Um, and also the starters pitch so long into these games, the bullpen doesn't really have to do much. But if it comes to a time where the if Phillies aren't as hot and the starters aren't going as deep into games and the offense isn't supplying as much offense and the bullpen has to pull their weight a bit more, I don't think they're going to do too well. But to answer your question, I would say they have a solidified closer. I just don't think it's as obvious that they have him because, like I've mentioned, I mean they're just blowing teams out, so they're not really calling upon him to close out games too much. But I mean, I would say Alvarado is definitely our
Yeah,
closer. I would say once you give a guy a light show, he's your
yeah,
closer. The guy
that
with the
solidifies
light
things.
show the guy with the light show is the closer. So I think they do have one in Alvarado, and I think he's our best reliever, and I love him as our closer.
Do you think there's anybody that they can bring up from AAA, Double A, Single A that would make an impact for the roster, whether it's a position player or a pitcher, whether reliever or
If
starter?
you want to talk about a position player, I think they should bring up. Now, this was a take I had a couple weeks ago, so I don't know how he's currently performing in AAA. I could stat check it. I would like to see Scott Kingery up here. From what I saw a couple weeks ago, he was tearing it up down in AAA. And if I can just pull up his stats real quick, I just want to see if that has continued or not. There was buzz about it on Twitter, guys talking about bringing up Scott Kingery and how well he was performing in the minors this year. So if I can just take a look real quick, currently in 2024, he has slowed down. Okay, he's now batting 225 with 5 home runs though. 7 stolen bases.
I personally
Hasn't
don't
been
know
a
if we're
couple
gonna. I
years.
wasn't expecting you to say Scott Kingery. I just personally don't know if. I think it's gonna be the same old story with Scott Kingery, Clearwater legend, but in the regular season just can't get it done.
I mean, but listen, it's just a guy you test out as a platoon guy. I don't think any of the platoon guys they have right now between Whit Merrifield and Mundo Sosa are, surefire guys you can count on. I think they're a little shaky. I don't think Cody Clemens is a guy you can count. He's the guy who got brought up after Trey Turner
I don't
went
know
down
what
with
you're seeing with
injury.
Sosa. I love Sosa. You obviously know he's one of my favorite players on the team, but I feel like he's proven in the playoffs that he can show up when he needs to. He's actually batting like what 285, 290, plays multiple different positions, runs the bases really well. Remember he won that Cardinals game a couple years back in the playoffs from his tag up, which not too many people could do in that moment. He's a really good base runner, fields really well. Um, and he's hitting for high average right now. Whit
Well, it's
Merrifield's
high
still
average,
turning
and
one as
maybe
well.
not Sosa. Maybe Sosa is more solidified.
I
But
mean,
with
Merrifield's got the
Merrifield, I'm
resume
not
too to
sold
make it
on.
happen. He just had a slow start to the season, but he's actually been playing pretty well the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm not sold on Merrifield, and I'm definitely not sold on Clemens. So I think
I'm not sold
I
on Clemens. I think
no.
Merrifield and Sosa I'm sold on, but outside of that, I feel like they could use another utility player depending on maybe some of the injuries that might arise. Because it's not like when they had Bryce, they called up Cody Clemens when Bryce had the paternity leave, and that was only a couple days. I mean, Trey Turner's going to be out for an extensive period of time. So if there's another injury to a position player, an everyday player,
You,
then things get a little shaky there.
you know what? Just to check on one of our top prospects, I want to see how Aiden Miller is performing right now. AAA, 20 years old this season. I mean, not AAA. What am I saying? Single A, Clearwater. Aiden Miller. I mean, I don't think this is a guy they're going to call up this season, although they did call up Johan Rojas a lot earlier than I thought they were going to. But this season in Clearwater, Aiden Miller, this is just to check in on one of our top prospects. Aiden Miller, right now in 16 games, 76 plate appearances, he's batting .313 with a .382 on base percentage, slugging .493 with 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, 8 stolen bases, caught stealing once, 6 doubles.
He's gonna have to
Aiden
find
Miller's
the ranks.
looking
I
good.
don't see them anointing somebody else like the way that they anointed Johan Rojas, and I think that was a difference
No, that
because
was that was
there's
they
more
needed a
comparable to like
center
what
fielder.
you can depict what his defense was going to give you at this level compared to like somebody making that jump from an offensive standpoint. You know what I mean? So, but
Yeah,
I'm
no,
proud of
I don't think they're gonna call up Aiden Miller. This is more so me just wanting to check while we're on the topic of minor leaguers. I just want to check on how well he's
Yeah,
doing.
but actually a couple minutes ago that you cut me off a little bit. Luis Arias out of the division now, and he's with the Padres. That was actually a big move. Kind of not a shocking or stunning move because Miami was horrible, but I felt like Miami was they made the playoffs last year and they were kind of trending. They signed Tim Anderson, who obviously isn't the same Tim Anderson from before, but have Josh Bell on the roster, and now they're kind of just got rid of their best player outside of Jazz Chisholm. So, but the Padres are love to acquire players like that. I just don't know how long he'll stay on that roster, but that's a good addition for the San Diego Padres. So the next
No,
time that they roll around to play them, that could be something. It's a guy that you can always count on to bat high contact. I think he was batting like barely 200 for to start the season, and now he's over 300 again, like you have come accustomed to with Luis Arias. So that was an interesting move that happened around the
ye-
league.
yeah, you know what? Two things to say to that. One, I think this is a much better role now for Luis Arias. When if you're the Miami Marlins and the guy you're counting on the most in your offense is a guy who literally only gets base hits. Doesn't walk, doesn't hit for power, doesn't drive and runs, doesn't steal bases, doesn't play defense. All he does is get base hits. Granted, he has a
I
very
mean, I
low.
feel like that's a little harsher, a little selling him a little bit short
No,
because that
no, I
Miami
don't think
lineup around
I
him
think
didn't really.
his ability to get base hits is probably the best in the league, possibly. But I don't think selling his shortcomings short at all. But what I was gonna say is I think it's much better for him to be in San Diego now. I don't think it's fair to make that the guy you lean on, the guy who only gets base hits. So I think now, it makes much more sense for him to be surrounded by other talent in San Diego so that, that's all you have to do is get base hits and you got other guys doing the other things. So I think it makes a lot more sense for him. I think this is much better for him. I think it's great for the Padres because, like I said about Miami, the Padres aren't leaning on him to be their uh, best player, so they're able to get big contributions out of everybody else and just, get the hitting contributions of Luis Arias. But I don't think what I said before was unfair to say at all. He didn't he didn't get a lot of RBIs
There's not
last
too many
season.
guys. I was just more so saying there's not too many guys to drive in around him on the Miami Marlins team, and they batted him at the
Yeah,
top
and
of
that's
the
the
order.
other thing too, is what's the point of having a guy who's going to hit such a high average without doing anything else if you don't have anybody that's going to drive him in?
Or he's also in his
Um,
prime age too. He's still young. I think
yeah,
he's like 27 years old. So I mean, I just thought it was interesting. Maybe those prospects work out. Maybe they don't. I just know the Phillies fleeced the Marlins out of JT in his prime, and none of those prospects worked out for the
I
Marlins.
really thought Sixto Sanchez was going to work out for a minute there. He was looking really promising in Miami
He looks crazy
for a
now. He
brief
gained a lot
period.
of weight
Yeah.
too. He's just looks like a whole different person. But
The other thing, though, I want to
yeah.
say about Luis Arias is the one thing that makes me happy about this move is I can go back to liking Luis Arias because I liked him when he was in Minnesota. And
Yeah,
then he went to the Marlins. I was like, all right, you're my enemy now, but now I don't have to hate him. So that's chill.
for sure.
Um,
Talk about a little bit of hatred. Maybe it's not a personal thing, but to end today's podcast, we're gonna go with the meatball of the week. Dante, it's my honor to pass it over to you for the meatball of the week.
Well, I'll give my meatball of the week that you're anticipating that I'm going to give. I wanted to. I was originally going to keep this as a separate subject and make my meatball of the week the fan who dropped Bryce Harper's home run ball last night. I thought
Oh,
that
that
was
was
pretty
funny. That
funny.
interview was
That,
hilarious too. I
yeah,
thought
I thought that was
he
pretty
was so
damn funny.
nonchalant about it. He's like, yeah, I bumped into my kid a little bit.
I
He was
I
trying to make
think
excuses, but he was like subtly owning up to it too. It was funny.
And I think what's really funny is when you watch it in real time. When you watch it in slow mo, it's not as great because when you watch it in real time, I think he didn't account for the pure velocity coming from that baseball because he
Oh
measures
yeah.
it up. He gets a perfect positioning on it, but it just knocks him back and he
That's why
drops it.
you gotta bring your glove to the ballpark.
No, it's you don't want to be one of those guys. You just got to account for it. You just gotta
What do
understand
you mean you don't want to be one of
if
those
a
guys? You don't
Bryce
want to be one of
if a
those guys that
Bryce
drops
Harper
Bryce
home
Harper's home
run
run.
if a Bryce Harper home run is coming your way, it's gonna have some heat behind it. You got to account for that. I think you just
That's
did
why
it.
you
But
bring the glove. Like if that's Bryce Harper's
nah,
like 400th home run, I'm bringing my
yeah,
glove.
okay, yeah. If Bryce Harper's at 399, sure, bring a glove to the game if you're singing in the outfield. Otherwise, no, don't be one of those guys. Um, but no. So my meatball of the week is Aubrey Graham, aka Drake. Without going into specifics as to why he is the meatball, because I don't want to go into those specifics on this podcast. But without going into specifics on it, um, he's just he's made himself look like a fool, especially with the last diss track that he dropped. I think it was maybe yesterday morning where he was responding to Kendrick's latest diss track, which by the way blew up so much that 10 minutes after it released, they were bumping it in the clubs. And then he tried to follow it up yesterday morning where basically the whole diss track was him just going, nuh-uh. I don't do any of that. He didn't even diss Kendrick. He just tried to deny everything the whole time and just made himself sound like an idiot. And Kendrick has absolutely cooked him between Meet the Grams, the other tracks he's put out, and even Metro Boomin cooked him with a
I see a lot
diss
of people.
beat.
I
A
see a lot
diss
of people saying
beat.
that Drake's like putting out false information and has people like out there putting out false information for him to be dissed on false information. So that's what I see, but it more so seems like
No, I think
Drake's
it's
like
true.
groupies that are saying that. I've kind of kept up with the beef. I've actually been looking. I listened to some of the songs a little bit. They're long though. You know what I mean? They're like 7 minute
They're
long
worth it.
diss
I am
tracks.
telling you,
I
they're
feel
worth
like
it.
you can be a little bit more timely with that, but um
Meet the
obviously, two
Grams
of the
is one of
biggest
the best
names in
things I've
rap
ever heard.
in today. Drake is not somebody that hasn't been in high profile beefs before. He had that beef with Meek Mill. And we were just talking about the Phillies for quite some time. The cover art for Drake's beef with Meek Mill back in the day for the back-to-back song was the Toronto Blue Jays 1993 World Series win over the Phillies. So that even I was on Meek Mill's side just to begin with in that beef. Um, I used to hate Drake a lot. I liked him when he first came out, and then I just started not liking him for a long period of time. But now I'm back to it's subtle. I don't really listen to his music though.
You know
Uh,
what?
I'll listen
I
to a
think
new
what's
Kendrick album when it drops, and I'll just listen to it. It's not like I play it over and over again, but he is somebody that I do listen to every new album that he puts out. So I can't say the same about Drake. So I feel like my opinion isn't um, the greatest opinion to use. Um, but it is interesting to see, and it is pretty good for rap because rap's pretty dry now. It's everybody rapping about the same things, and there's not any. It's just a lot of parody in rap now. So I feel like it is good to have two of the biggest names beefing with each other and not shooting and killing each other like 1990s rap beef, but just not even in a playful manner because it
R.I.P.
actually seems like
Takeoff
there is some
and the
disdain
respect.
behind these raps, but it is good to see two of the biggest names in rap compete with each other.
Yeah, and not only that, what I stated before the podcast, to me, this is like the World War I of rap beefs. I mean, you've just had everybody getting involved. Like I mentioned, Metro Boomin dropped a diss bit. I mean, yeah, a
This
diss
beat,
a diss beat, which is
beast
it's
bit.
so catchy. It's so catchy. BBL Drizzy, BBL Drizzy, and then I don't
I
know if
think
you
I
saw.
saw. Wasn't he? He was like he was going to pay somebody who had the best verse of it or something, or he like retweeted
Yeah,
it or
he's gonna
something like
give the
that.
beat to whoever drops the best song to it. But I don't know if you saw somebody on Twitter
Well, that's
posted
funny because
Kyle.
I saw somebody rap over it, and I think he retweeted or something. And I
Yeah,
thought like
somebody.
somebody just went out of their way to make that beat and then like get Metro Boomin's attention. But when I found out that it was
Uh,
made by him, I thought that was even funnier.
yeah,
So
because Metro Boomin. First, I wanted to say somebody on Twitter posted Kyle Lowry highlights to that beat, which I thought was hilarious. But Metro Boomin, I mean, that was the only thing he could have done because in the first diss track by Dre, he said Metro shut up and make some drums. So everybody was saying Metro, there's not a Metro that can do now because if he goes back to making beats, he's just listening to what Drake said. And if he doesn't make any beats, then he just, he looks like a coward. So he did the only option, which was to make a diss beat, which I think was absolutely brilliant, well played. And then you also had J. Cole involved in the beginning, and J. Cole made the best decision by just saying, you know what, I'm going to keep my nose out of it because things have gotten really messy now. And J. Cole is probably just enjoying life while Kendrick and Drake are going at each other's throats. Although, I mean, it's
did
it's
J Cole
clear who the
diss?
winner is
Did he
now.
originally diss?
Yeah, he just
Was it
Kendrick.
Kendrick?
He was
Why
the
did that
first.
happen?
So, well, because so it all started because in that song Kendrick Lamar was on. It wasn't really a diss track. He just decided to diss J. Cole and Drake in the song. The name of it is slipping my mind
I
because I
think it's
keep
like that,
getting.
right? With Metro Boomin and
Yeah,
Future.
yeah, yeah. And like that, he says F the big three, it's just big me, right? Because the big three was widely considered to be like the top three rappers in the game was widely considered to be Kendrick, J. Cole, and Drake. So he kind of dissed both of them when he said that. So then J. Cole was the first one to respond. He put out a diss track, then immediately ended up deleting it and apologizing to Kendrick. Like, and was like, you know what? I don't really want to do this. Um, so yeah, and then Drake came out with his diss track, where he kind of just called Kendrick short the whole time, telling him to do some push-ups, and then Kendrick came for his throat, and then Drake tried to say you beat women, and then Kendrick really came for his throat. I mean, he addressed his son in his diss track and Meet the Grams. You know, to have a diss track where you're addressing the person's son, I think that's just a whole different level. And then he addressed his secret daughter we don't know about. He addressed his mom. Um, it's just Kendrick just put
Yeah,
an
but at
end
the end of
to
the
it.
day, is like Drake really getting rammed? Because isn't that the same stuff? Like I thought Pusha T coffined Drake a couple years back, but then again, like it's the same old stuff that everybody's talking about to Drake. You know what I mean? It's the same old stuff, and like everybody's trying to beef with him. And I'm not even
I
trying to advocate for
I
Drake.
think
I'm
it's
just saying.
different because I mean Kendrick is just it's just been like a full on assault. This hasn't just been one diss track. This hasn't just been two diss tracks. I mean, he has just been dropping track after track, just destroying Drake. I mean, this is just it's like I don't know if
And I
you've ever
seen
seen The
somebody
Last
also put out there.
Jedi,
There's
but
like the writing credits for the diss tracks like only has Kendrick Lamar's name under his, and then it has multiple people's under Drake's.
yeah, and that's the other thing I forgot to mention that's being mentioned in these diss tracks is Drake's ghostwriters. And then you even had a ghostwriter come out and basically put Drake on blast as as his ghostwriter. I mean it's just so much that's happening. It's just making Drake look really, really bad. I mean, it's like almost like a trickle effect.
Oh, the
It's
Ghost Rider things that was the original Meek Mill beef. That's been out for a
yeah,
decade.
but that was I feel like that was more speculation than anything, and now it's like, oh, he really
Well, I
does.
mean,
Or
that's what I was telling you in that underrated Meek Mill diss track. I forget it was I think it's called I Just Want to Know. And that was the Undertaker beat,
I don't
and
even
he had the
remember.
reference track for Running Through the Six with My Woes that Quentin Miller recorded. And he
Yeah,
put that in the middle of the
I
song.
don't even remember Meek's track from that beef too much. Talk actually before we get out of here. Talk speaking of um Kendrick and Drake beef, and speaking of Meek Mill, I think an underrated beef from back in the day was Meek and Kendrick because the song Meek put out, "Ooh, Kill 'Em," that diss on Kendrick. That's up there in the all timers for diss tracks. Just to mention that real fast, but and you know what? One final thing while I'm mentioning other diss tracks, I think you know what I think is the most underrated diss track of all time that doesn't even get any attention. And this is coming from a guy who has one of the most famous diss tracks of all time, that being Eminem when he dropped Kill Shot. People never talk about The Warning. I don't know if you remember The Warning. After Mariah Carey made that song about him, "Why You So Obsessed with Me," basically denying their previous relationship and, basically saying Eminem's crazy. We never had a relationship. Eminem dropped The Warning, where he literally played audio tapes from their phone conversations. It was a diss track with receipts, on top of just the lyrical genius of that song. I think I used to think The Warning was like, a top three at the time, a top three diss track of all time, along with Ether and Hit 'Em Up. And it's completely forgotten about now. So that is a diss track that needs more love, in my opinion.
Yeah, we also have what is it? Chris Brown and Quavo were beefing too.
Oh yeah, and that's going on the sidelines too. Yeah, I mean it's World War I of rap beef,
That's
in
funny
my
because I don't
opinion.
know if you saw the picture of the fashion show. They had to sit next to each other. Like in the past
I
year,
didn't see that. No,
there's a
I
picture
did
of
not
them
see that.
literally
That's pretty
seat to
funny.
seat next to each other, and Quavo's on his phone the whole time looking, and Chris Brown looks like he's just like clenching his teeth, waiting to go off. So
That's
yeah,
pretty funny. I didn't see
rap
that.
beef's always cool. Just hopefully people just don't take it too personally and start going 90s with it and start killing each other. So as long
Well, I
as
mean, Drake has. Let's
I
not
mean, there is that going on. I mean, that's like,
X
like some
X
of the drill rap and stuff like that's actually happening in those inner cities. But you know,
X. You know what
the
I'm saying?
mainstream, that would be outrageous if some violence was actually taken upon the mainstream rappers like that. But hopefully it
Well,
doesn't
you
get.
know what? Thankfully, England never has to worry about that. I mean, they have a drill rap scene out there themselves, but
Yeah.
um, I once saw a video of two guys in England, two roadmen as they call them, get into an altercation at a gas station, which would have resulted in extreme violence in the U.S. But they literally pulled out swords and had a sword fight in a gas station. I'm not making this up. It was from surveillance footage. They had a sword fight.
All right.
It's
Well, that's
it's
respectable. As long as
no.
there's somebody there to break it up.
England is it's a joke over there, especially the food. Anyway, we're out of time.
Thank you guys for joining us in on the Paisan Sports Podcast, episode 45. We'll be back at some point next week to probably talk about the Phillies a little bit. Maybe if there's some stuff going on in the NBA playoffs, we'll touch on that. And if there's any more breaking Eagles news, this is one of the first podcasts we didn't mention the Eagles once, but there's not really too much to talk about besides them starting rookie minicamp. So, yeah, we'll be back at some point next week. And thank you guys for tuning in.